Welcome everybody to the first video of this series. I am Chris Johnston. I am currently working, I'm beginning to work on a CFI certification. This is an attempt to practice the lesson plans that I've created. It hopefully will help you learn something. It will hopefully help me learn something as I practice teaching what I've learned and studied. Let's jump right in here to Fundamentals of Instruction, Task A, Human Behavior and Effective Communication. Here's what we're going to cover. Human behavior, human needs, defense mechanisms to learning, anxiety, big one, barriers to communication and developing communication skills. These are all very, very important if we are going to instruct people and have them learn. So let's talk about first area, human behavior. We all have different personality types, which influences how we learn. Our experiences help us formulate learning paths, and those experiences can either be similar or dissimilar to our instructors or our students. Obviously, when we have similar experiences and backgrounds with our students or slash instructors, learning comes easier. We're on the same page. When we have entirely different backgrounds, experiences, and we don't really relate to each other, it's much more difficult. Not that it can't be overcome, it's just more difficult. So all students have needs. Um, these can be wide-ranging, but the needs must be met in order for learning to happen, to take place. So there was a famous psychologist by the name of Maslow. He determined, or he formulated a pyramid, if you will, of hierarchy of needs. Looks something like this. I'm going to draw a perfect triangle. There's one perfectly straight line. Here's another perfectly straight line. And here's a third perfectly straight line. And you'll notice all these angles are perfectly perfect also. So Maslow said that all humans have 5 needs. And these needs are dependent upon the need immediately preceding it. The first need that all people have is physiological. What's physiological needs? Well, this is our food, our water, um, food, water, shelter. All these needs have to be met before we can even attempt to start learning anything. Think about it. If you're hungry, tired, if you haven't slept, haven't drank any water, you're not going to learn very well. The next need is safety and security. Once our physiological needs are met, we have to be safe and secure. Take it to the extreme. If we live in a war zone and there's bombs constantly going off, we're going to be more worried about those bombs going off than we are going to be concerned about learning about airplanes. A little more realistically, if our students don't feel safe with us as instructors in performing stalls or spins or takeoffs or landings, they're not going to be focused on learning anything. They're going to be focused on, are they going to die? So safety and security must be addressed. The next layer Maslow identified is love and belonging. Suiting red color. I don't say so. I should write this over here. Maslow's needs of hierarchy. So, love and belonging. Students have to feel like they fit in. They have to feel like they belong. If they're not welcome, then they're going to be uncomfortable and they're not going to learn anything. Right? So, love and belonging. Next layer, self-esteem. What was that? If our students if they have poor self-esteem, then they're not going to achieve very much. They don't feel good about themselves. They don't think they can do it, and consequently, when they have a poor attitude, a negative self-image, then they're not going to perform very well. Finally, the last one is self-actualization. What is self-actualization? This is where learning has meaning. They understand what they're learning and why they're learning it and how they're learning it. They're self-sufficient. So, as you can see, all of these build upon, not do that, all of these needs build upon the previous one, and they're all have to be taken care of and ensured in this order. If not, then wherever the deficiency lies, it's here, they're never going to move the pyramid. All right, so that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Next thing we're going to talk about is Douglas McGregor, another great psychiatrist, psychologist, and his theories of people. Get a pen here. Douglas McGregor had two theories, Theory X and Theory Y. Theory X said that people dread work and have to be watched over continually. So I'm just going to summarize that with pushed. People left to their own devices will be lazy. They won't go out there and be motivated. Theory Y is the exact opposite. Douglas McGregor said that people enjoy work and need it, just like they need play and rest. So I'm going to sum that up with motivated. Under Theory Y, people will derive satisfaction from accomplishing things and getting them done. Why is this important? Because students that we have could fall into either Theory X or Theory Y molds. You might have a very young student in a college at a flight school who is very much Theory X. He hasn't learned how to study, or she isn't really motivated to get done. So we have to push them. You might have an older student who has always had a lifelong dream of learning to fly. This is their chance. They have the time, money, and means to do it now, and they're very much Theory Y. So it's important that we identify and know where our students fall in this spectrum here, Theory X and Theory Y. As we know, let's talk about defense mechanisms. As we know, learning is humbling. It's very, learning something new and being told you're not doing it right is very difficult. And it's not uncommon for people to become defensive. So let's talk about defense mechanisms that people have. Write this here. Defense mechanisms. Being defensive. Rationalizing why they did something the way they did. First one we're going to talk about is repression. All right. So repression. We all know what that means. You're just subduing it, right? Let's not think about it. Let's just put it into the back of our mind, forget about it, and never deal with it again. So make a correction with a student. They might repress that thought or that comment and not ever deal with it. Denial is next. Never happened. Didn't go down like that. You have a critique, tell the student, hey, you flared too early. They deny it. Nope, that didn't happen. That didn't go that way. Never occurred. Now, pretty easy. Next one, compensation. You tell a student, hey, you flared too early, caused us to bounce on that landing and maybe porpoise down the runway or something. Compensation, they'll say, yeah, that happened, but did you see how I handled it after that? That was really great. I immediately did a go around. The go around was perfect. So they're merely compensating a good in order to mitigate the bad. So that's compensation. Projection. What is projection? Projection is blaming somebody else, the blame game. For example, they fail a check ride. Well, the DPE was too tough. He was too strict, and the tolerances were too tight. Not my fault. If I had somebody who was fair, it's their. I would have passed. That's projection, blaming somebody else. Next, rationalizing. Rationalize. We rationalize. We make excuses, right? Just gonna write excuses. I would have done better on the written test had I studied more. If I had more time to study, I would have done a lot better, right? Rationalizing. Next one the book talks about is reaction formulation. What this is somebody says, I don't care what other people think, right? Yeah, my landings are bad, but I really don't care what the other students think. I don't care what my instructor thinks. That's reaction formulation. Fantasy. These people are just delusional, right? Pretending to be better than they really are. That's all right. Pretend. Tell them, hey, your landings could use some work, and they say, are you kidding me? I'm Captain Sullenberger. I nailed that landing, right? Just out of touch. Displacement. Displacement is particularly dangerous. This is where they take it out on somebody else. Take their anger out. Take it out on their spouse, on their family, anybody but them. Instead of talking it out with the instructor, they just take it out on other people. So those are our defense mechanisms. Next thing we're going to talk about is anxiety. This is particularly detrimental to learning. It's something that's pretty, I don't want to say vague, but can be hidden pretty well by someone who's well trained, I guess you would say, and with anxiety. Um, all students are going to be anxious. There's no doubt about it. Whether you're taking a check ride or learning a new skill, or there's a lot of pressures in flying, both with getting things done on time and the expense and the timelines and stuff like that. So, anxiety. We need to be able to identify anxiety, and anxiety is evidenced through many ways, and we'll just list a few of them here. Um, One way is maybe inappropriate laughter, and maybe not inappropriate, but ill-timed laughter. They're laughing for no reason or at something that really isn't funny. Another way might be mood swings. From happy to sad to angry, all within one lesson. Not entirely uncommon, but when the mood swings get excessive and more frequent, then there's probably an issue. We talked about anger, emotional. Maybe they just have a breakdown or something. But we need to be always vigilant and always looking out for anxiety in students. And whatever we can do to help calm that anxiety will help to better, I guess you would say, their learning ability. Next section is barriers to communication. What are some barriers to communication between two people? First area, lack of common experience or ground. right? So a person who's been around an airport quite a bit is going to maybe assume that their student knows their way around and not explain things as well. Consequently, if the student doesn't ask questions, a lot is left assumed and mistakes are made, and it can be downright dangerous, even at times. Next is confusion. We've all had instructors where you just walked away confused. You're not sure what they're trying to say or what they're trying to get across. And again, if the student doesn't ask questions, then that confusion just builds upon itself and can cause big problems down the road. Overuse of abstractions. One day I'll learn to use this pen. What does overuse of abstractions mean? That is not being specific. Use of pronouns, this, that, it, his, her. If the student doesn't know what you're talking about, they have to make an assumption as to what exactly it is you're referring to. This kind of goes into another area, which I guess assumption would be the best way to put it. But using the term aircraft, let's say. Well, to a student, an aircraft might mean airplane. And we all know that aircraft includes things such as rotary wing, includes maybe weight shift aircraft, anything that really flies by definition is an aircraft. So we have to be sure that we don't speak in general terms and that we're very specific. When we're talking about an airplane, and we let them know that's a fixed wing. A fixed wing can have a single engine, it can be multi-engine, it can be seaplane, single engine seaplane, single engine land, multi-engine sea, whatever. So don't overuse abstractions. Make sure they know what you're talking about. This is a huge barrier to communication. Finally, the last area is interference. It's pretty obvious, right? If the environment is loud and noisy, they're not going to learn very much. It's going to be much harder for them to pay attention. So make sure the area is conducive to learning. Finally, the last section we're going to talk about here is how to develop good communication skills. So we've identified our students' needs. We've addressed those. We know what kind of person they are. Are they driven or do they have to be pushed? We know what their defense mechanisms are, how they're going to make excuses, and how we can mitigate those. We've addressed their anxiety, calmed them, and made them reassured that what they're feeling is normal. We've identified the barriers to effective communication. We've broken those down. The final step is developing our communication skills so that we can best get across our thoughts and ideas, concepts to the student so that they can understand them and apply them in their aviation career. So probably the best way to develop communication skills is the act of role playing. If two CFI students are learning how to teach, they can teach each other. Another great way is to teach your family members or friends or whoever will listen. Those are probably some of the best people because they don't have an aviation background, I'm assuming, and whatever questions they have are real. It's not fake or made up, or they're not pitching you a softball here. So if you can find people to teach, that is a great way to develop your communication skills. Next area is instructional communication. I'm just going to write instructional here. What is this? Teach what you know, not what you think you know. If you don't know an answer, if you don't understand something, tell your student you don't know, but you'll get back to them. Nothing will destroy their confidence more than you making something up and having it be wrong and find out in the future. Next, listen. Active listening. Don't start answering the question before they've finished asking it, because it might be something completely different. Listen to what they're saying, both verbally, and listen to what they might be saying non-verbally. A lot of non-verbal cues can help you to tailor your approach and your answers. Questioning. Question your students. Don't ask yes or no questions because those are no good. Sometimes they're good, but mostly not good. Back to the previous example of aircraft. You can ask them, is this an aircraft? And point to a picture. That's a yes-no question. You have a 50-50 chance of getting it right. Better question might be, name 3 types of aircraft for me. Something along those lines. An open-ended that makes them think and talk and formulate an answer. Finally, the book calls the last area instructional enhancement. I call it professional development. You have to stay on top of your game. Just because you've achieved a certain level at something doesn't mean that you stop learning, because that's when you get into trouble. Pretty soon your students will know more than you, and again, that does not breed confidence in them. That concludes the fundamentals of instructing task A. The reference for all this can be found in the Aviation Instructor's Handbook, which is FAA publication H-8083-9A. Questions, comments, problems, leave me a comment. I'd be happy to hear what you think. See you on the next one.